All right, welcome back. This is the 11th video for Unit 5. We're going to talk about ecological footprints. This should be a review for many of you from our first unit, but we'll go over it anyways because it is important. So, if everybody lived like Americans, how many people could we support on the Earth? And the answer to that is about 1.5 billion people. The problem with that, of course, is that the current world population is 7.68 billion and rising. So, if everybody lived on the Earth like Americans do, we would be out of the Earth. We would run out very quickly. So an ecological footprint measures how fast we consume resources and generate waste. All of these are put in place comparing it to how fast nature can absorb our waste and generate new resources. Now, ecological footprint is just the amount of biologically productive land and water needed to supply the people with resources and to absorb and recycle the wastes and pollution produced by such resources. So basically it's a measure of area in hectares. And you might not know what a hectare is, so let's talk about that. A hectare is 10,000 square meters. So 100 by 100 meters, or 2.5 acres, or a tenth of a kilometer squared. You can imagine if you had a 400 meter track on your normal track, the area inside of that would be just slightly bigger than 1 hectare. A soccer field plus another half of a soccer field would be a hectare. Now, how much biologically productive space is actually available on Earth? The current belief is that it's 11.3 billion hectares. This is cropland, forests, and fisheries. This doesn't include deserts, glaciers, or open ocean because there's a lot of area that we can't use. So this gives us about 1.8 hectare available per person on the world. Now, if your biological capacity to replenish those resources and absorb the waste is exceeded by the population's footprint, then there's what's called an ecological deficit. Many places now are in ecological deficits. So just looking at the world map, areas here that have a deficit are in red and orange. Areas that are in positive or have a reserve are in green and yellow. And then there obviously are some areas that there's not enough data. But you can kind of see that many of the developed world is in ecological deficit. Now, from 1960 to 2008, this is the footprint. This is going up. These are the number of planet Earths needed. Now, as it stands right now, we can either continue on the track we're on and continue to use more and more Earths, or we have to have a rapid reduction. These are things that have to be done. Now, total footprint in million hectares and the share of the global ecological capacity is shown here, the United States being the greatest, Japan being the smallest on this list, the European Union, China, then India. What's interesting, though, is if we look at the per capita data, the United States is still at the top, but Japan is actually the second highest. And this is because Japan, although they have a small overall share, they have less people. So more of that, the per person there, is their land area is smaller, and they have more people per land area, so that number goes up. So per capita, this just shows you here, Australia is pretty high up there. The United States and Canada, there obviously are areas where they're doing great. You know, Antarctica, hey, what a good job. There's nobody lives there, but it's nice and green. Now, if we look at all of the resources and biocapacity that's being used yearly, the world biocapacity was surpassed in the late 1970s or after 1975, and it has continued to rise since then. Our energy footprint is also going up. Most of our energy footprint is seen through CO2 from fossil fuels. Now, if we look at developed versus developing countries, this is really an important difference. There is a correlation between the income and the ecological footprint. Developing countries have smaller footprints. It's just a fact, looking at the numbers. So why do developed countries have a larger footprint? Well, the food, we eat more meat. Energy, we have more of a fossil fuel dependence. We have 2 times the amount of energy in diet. We have intensive farm strategies and automobiles and factories. And we need more, there's a need for more carbon dioxide fixation. So a biome has the amount of CO2 fixation that depends on the climate and vegetation type. And because developing worlds are in areas where there is less CO2 fixation, it has more of an impact. So this is just a graph to show you the ecological footprint per person based on the income. So you can see that high income countries have continually steadily rise, while middle and low income countries have actually stayed pretty steady. And that will bring us to the end of our 11th video. Stay tuned for the 12th.